Time now for Labor Press, your source for daily labor news and industry information. Hear discussions on the workplace and interesting talk from prominent and influential personalities in the labor community. And now your hosts, Neil Tippel and Bill Holfeld.
Power without accountability. Are you listening? No power without accountability.
Welcome to Labor Press Blue Collar Buzz, the show that tells the story about everyday workers. I'm your host, Neil Tippel, our co-host, Bill Holfeld, producer Joe Maniscalco. And with us, we have, in the studio, Ray Rogers. He's Director of Corporate Campaigns, and he is someone that unions and organizations often look up to. And Ray, tell us about Corporate Campaigns.
Well, Corporate Campaign the concept was created to take on the J.P. Stevens company in which the film Norma Ray was based some years ago, very successfully. And it's really a mechanism to confront power with power. I basically say to unions and others, you can't confront powerful adversaries and expect to gain any meaningful concessions or justice unless you're backed by a significant force of power yourself. So by the key definition of a corporate campaign, it's just not one demonstration after another. It's a real strategy and tactics based on in-depth research and analysis, and it really confronts these powerful institutions with power.
Well, Ray, welcome to the program, first of all. And I got to say, the first time that I stumbled across your work was your work with the Stop Killer Coke campaign, which is a campaign that my own teenage daughter got involved with and became very active with. And why don't you just tell us very briefly about the underpinnings of that campaign?
Well, it created the campaign to stop Killer Coke around the issue of the kidnapping, torture, and murder of union leaders in Colombia and Guatemala with the complicity of the Coca-Cola company to prevent unionization in those countries. And, of course, anybody who knows the situation in Colombia understands that a union is not just necessary to try to fight for decent wages and benefits, but it's also to save lives. Anybody who stands up to promote unionism down there as a target on their back. And a lot of union leaders, and as well as their family members, have been murdered because they've stood up to fight for a union. And we've cost Coca-Cola hundreds of millions of dollars in lost sales by simply getting their contracts cut by big universities. For example, the City University of New York, because of our campaign, you can buy no Coke products on any facility at the City University of New York. At one time, the Coca-Cola was going to be the only beverage that you could buy on that university.
And that's a tremendous size campus when you take in all the branches. So did that have a very real effect on Coca-Cola?
An extremely real effect, and I can only say that these are the kind of things that has brought the CEO asking to have private dinner meetings with me to discuss how we could perhaps resolve our differences.
So you managed to bring the CEO to the table, and that's encouraging. Now there's a lot of listeners out there that are saying, that's really laudable and that's really great, and it's terrific that somebody's standing up for the rights of workers in Colombia, but let's make it a little more local. Let's bring it back here, not just the United States, but right here in our own hometown in New York, and talk about some of the issues that you're interested in the here and now.
Well, let me tell you, I get so upset when I see what's happening to construction workers throughout the city. I had my office down there in Dumbo, and 2 years ago, I had these laborers working in my building. I went up to see if all the dust was coming down where all of our offices were. I'm saying, what the hell is going on here? All the silica dust? This is bad for the breathing of us who rent here in this building, okay? And, of course, our rents are going up and up and up. And I go up to see the workers there. There's no protective equipment. They're handling these jackhammers, no protective equipment, nothing to protect their hearing, nothing to protect their breathing. And I told them, I said, listen, I have nothing against you workers, but I'm very upset about the conditions that you're working in. And this was Walentis, all right? And these conditions should not exist. I tried to get the laborers involved. I didn't have any success in doing it. I know they're fighting so many battles in so many places, and they're quite aggressive. But this is one area where they needed a union. And quite frankly, even the people that rented there needed a union standing up for them because they were suffering from all the bad work that was being done in the building and all the dust that was coming down within the office spaces. But it was the workers that I was most concerned about. And this is going on all over the city.
Well, you hit a note with me, Ray, because I have a long history with a background in construction, and I was an OSHA instructor for many years. So health and safety in the construction industry is of paramount importance to me. me, always has been. And union construction in New York City has been, part of the real lifeblood of this city of helping to create and maintain a middle class. And the idea of it fading away, which seems to be the meme these days, that they're going to do away with union construction in New York City, for me, is a very upsetting one.
Well, that's good. It's very upsetting with me as well, because I realize the importance of the labor movement to the city and quite frankly, for the country. But I'm going to tell you, there's one institution in the city. It's called the Real Estate Board of New York, REBNY. REBNY is one of the worst institutions ever to plague New York City. I would describe REBNY as, I think I could describe it and explain why, as a criminal enterprise that quite frankly operates with impunity and has completely corrupted our political system with the tens of millions of dollars by REBNY and by its billionaire members who are running REBNY that funneled this money into our election process. And it's not just at the state legislatures, it's at our city council. They were talking about the $10 million that they were going to feed into the city council elections a few years ago. We know what they're doing with their money. They're promoting nothing but a city, okay, of the wealthy. And the ones that are running REBNY are these billionaire art collectors. They spend more money on a piece of art than sometimes a building may cost to actually build it. Now, I can make a number of gripes about the real estate board, but one of my biggest gripes is the issue of this 421A. It's my understanding, and I'm not an expert on it, but I think I can read and understand what's going on here. The union simply said, listen, we're giving these billionaire art collectors, these developers, basically $1 billion a year in tax abatements in order to build affordable housing. And what did the union come in and say? Well, listen, wait a minute. It seems to only be fair that if you're going to get all these tax abatements of over $1 billion a year to build affordable housing, you ought to at least pay the prevailing wage. Now, why do we have a prevailing wage? Well, it's a wage that's set by the government. It's not set by the unions. It's set by the government. And it was created, my understanding is, so that these developers couldn't come in and bring in a lot of non-union workers to get the cheapest workers doing the, perhaps in many cases, the sloppiest work and oftentimes dangerous, in terms of the safety and what happens. Look, in this city, I think the last 18 deaths on construction jobs, 17 have been non-union.
And just to jump in here for a second, Ray, I think what a lot of people don't understand, that it isn't something that's on the quote-unquote liberal agenda. The original prevailing wage law was Davis-Bacon, and both Davis and Bacon were both hardcore Republicans.
Right. And let me tell you who's really against it when we talk about these billionaire developers. Okay, we can talk about Stephen Ross, the head of related companies. Certainly, he's very much opposed. We talk about REBNY. The chair of REBNY is Rob Spire, the head of Tishman Speyer. Now, let's look at the CEO. Let's look at the chairman, for example, of REBNY. Let's look at his background, okay? He's worth $4 billion. His dad was worth a lot more than that, all right? All right, not too many years ago, we had this situation in Stuyvesant Town and Peter Cooper Village. What did Tishman Speyer do along with MetLife? They went in there to try to, they overcharged all these tenants, okay, millions of dollars, and the tenants won a lawsuit. What they want to do is to force all the tenants out, all the moderate income people out of this beautiful Stuyvesant Peter Cooper Village complex. And they did it by raising all the rents and trying to keep raising them, and they did it illegally. And they ended up losing a lawsuit, paying over $170 million and more.
And
okay.
I grew up in Manhattan, Ray, so I knew an awful lot of kids. I went to high school with a lot of kids that lived down there in Stuyvesant Town, and they were the offspring of just working class people who were working and producing, but they were enabled to live in Manhattan because there was some sort of affordable housing for them.
Right. Well, not only is REBNY bad for the construction workers and the unions, and by the way, if there's one group that can take REBNY on, and believe me, I'm prepared to show them how to do it, is the unions.
Let's definitely talk about that because I'm so tired of hearing about how unions are dead.
No, unions are not dead. In fact, they're the most powerful force. And let me tell you who would come with the unions. You get every small business person out there who's being put out of business by these high commercial rents. They'll come and work with the unions. Every tenant out there, they'll come and work with the unions. But you want to know what you need? The unions need to have an organizational structure. They need to have a strategy that everybody can plug into. And by God, I've spent over 100 hours recently. There's reasons I did this. Just researching and analyzing REBNY and its structure and the people that are running it. I guarantee you, construction unions, small businesses out there, tenants, I have no doubt, as a strategist, well known for the work I do in developing these kind of campaigns, I know how to divide and conquer REBNY so that we create a much more level playing field. All right? I'm making a big statement here on your radio station, and I will stand by it. You bring together the top labor leaders in this city, and I guarantee you I can articulate to them, and I think I can have them jumping out of their seat if they really want to take REBNY on, and instead of having 30 or 40% union construction, we're going to go back to when it was 85 or 90%, where it should be. I'd like to see it be 100%.
I believe you. I'm a believer, Ray. You got me. But give us a teaser. Give us the tip of the iceberg here of what you're talking about, how to go about doing this.
Well, first of all, you have to know how to look at the structure and develop a divide and conquer strategy. Okay, I'll tell you one thing that you might find interesting. You know how the REBNY, they want open shop. And they said within 5 years, all union construction is going to be open shop. Okay? They do not want unions. Why is REBNY a closed shop? Are you aware that REBNY is a closed shop? I bet you people don't understand. And what I would say is that there are people within, quote, the union, not a labor union, but the organization, which is like a union, REBNY. You're not going to work. More than half of the people that are members of REBNY aren't going to work if they don't pay their, quote, union dues to REBNY. I would explain this to the public, how this works, and to the unions. I think it's a hell of an issue. Just the fact that REBNY is a closed shop. And I can tell you, I believe that that there are many REBNY members, by the way, that don't like paying their so-called union dues to REBNY because they don't think they're getting anything for it. And I'll bet you that we could create a campaign where thousands of people would leave REBNY, just like REBNY is trying to get thousands to leave the labor movement.
Before we go any further, Ray, let's get some information out here before we forget, because I've been known to forget. How do people contact you? Give us a phone number, give us a website so that people can get a hold of you.
Okay, my website is corporatecampaign.org. That's one of my websites, corporatecampaign.org. Also, you might want to go to killercoke.org because we brought that up. My phone number is 718-852-2808. 718-852-2808. This is Ray Rogers. My email address is info@corporatecampaign.org. Info@corporatecampaign.org. Let me tell you one other thing. The unions have got to understand how to take on the major financial players behind REBNY. They're very identifiable, okay? And if you go back to when I took on this big Texel firm, J.P. Stevens, you saw resignations of CEOs from Manufacturers Hanover Bank, at the time the fourth largest bank in the country, the two CEOs resigning from New York Life Insurance Company, the fourth largest life insurance company, the head of Avon Products resigning from the big Texel company, J.P. Stevens, the heads of J.P. Stevens resigning. This is the kind of power that the labor movement here, they have that inherent power. I can show them how to bring it out.
It's like we're sitting on a gold mine and we're walking around with holes in our shoes.
And
right?
I'm telling you, I'm so damn frustrated when I see what's going on because I know what the potential is out there, okay? So we don't need, when people like the CEO of Related, Jeff Blau, he goes and buys a $51 million Upper East mansion, okay? I mean, come on, give me a break. These are not poor people. They don't need the tax abatements. Let's stop paying real wages and protect workers on the job, and we can only do that if we have good, strong construction unions.
Ray, from your lips to God's ear, one more time, quick, give us your website so that somebody can get to you if they want to.
Corporatecampaign.org is my website, 718-852-2808, and I really appreciate this opportunity to be on with the Union Press.
Ray, it's a pleasure, and we're going to have you back, that's for sure.
And we're talking with Ray Rogers, the Director of Corporate Campaign. And I'm your host, Neil Tappel. Our co-host is Bill Hofield, producer Joe Maniscalco. And you're listening to AM 970, The Answer. We will be right back.
You're listening to Labor Press on AM 970, The Answer. Welcome back to Labor Press, the show about labor and the laborer. Here are your hosts, Neil Tappel and Bill Holfeld.
Working for a living, I'm taking what they're giving because I'm working for a living.
We are back with Labor Press Blue Collar Buzz. I'm your host, Neil Tappel. Our co-host is Bill Hofield, producer Joe Maniscalco. And with us in the studio, we still have Ray Rogers. And Ray, you've been connected with a lot of tough campaigns. Tell us the most difficult campaign you've ever been involved with.
perhaps the most difficult campaign, and which was one of the greatest campaigns, saddest, had highs and lows, was the famous P9 fight against the Hormel Company out in the Midwest.
Oh, I remember that, right?
That's right. Put something very powerful together. And what was so sad about it was where the local and state police, the National Guard, and the company and the banks behind the company could not defeat the workers. The ugly part of the labor movement stepped in and would not allow this local to go out and win a major victory that the international couldn't do. And I don't want to, look, it's I don't think it's any secret about the differences back at that time. This was back in the 80s. The differences with the United Food and Commercial Workers. But I remember the president at the time, Bill Wynn, who's deceased, he and Lane Kirkland, head of the AFL-CIO, decided that they were not going to allow these workers to win. They did everything they could do to destroy not only the local, but also my organization. I said, I'll be standing when they're gone. I am standing, and they are gone. I will say one thing, that the president of the International that undermined its own local was known as the Mr. T of the labor movement because of all the diamond and golds that he had around his neck and on his wrist and on his tie clasp.
Well, Ray, you hit a hot spot with me now when you mentioned Lane Kirkland, because when you mention Lane Kirkland, you look him up, right, in the encyclopedia, what they have, the picture there is an empty suit, okay? And that's been the problem since the demise of George Meany. We haven't had that kind of leadership we need at the head of the AFL-CIO.
I would completely agree with you.
Well, that's unusual. I wasn't expecting that.
It's a shame. Look, being a labor leader is one of the most difficult jobs that anybody can possibly do. Okay, you go home every night, whether it's the vacation, weekends, the weekday, and there's so many things on your mind because you're representing so many workers. And in many cases, you're not only representing workers to get decent pay and benefits, to have a decent livelihood and to send the kids to school and have a home, but you're also trying to protect them on the job. And, the Occupational Safety and Health Act, when we look at all the great social programs that have come across out there, who's been behind it? It's been the labor movement. Okay, and the labor movement is being disorganized. And believe me, this whole thing can be turned around. And I hope that maybe we can help with that, with the construction industry here with respect to what REBNY is doing. There are a couple of things that I feel to mention, if I could. Public housing. There are 600,000 people in public housing. Now, public housing has a lot of moderate income people. But that alone would be the 31st largest city in public housing. And you know what REBNY's trying to do? They're trying to turn the public housing land and everything into private development. Privatize everything, right? And this is wrong. And this is going to hurt this city. It's wrong. Let me tell you another thing. When you look at the head of REBNY, Rob Spire with Tishman's Spire, they've got these buildings out in Long Island City. Okay, residential buildings. They got tax abatements under 421A. Because of a loophole in the law, none of those 1,900 units have to be affordable housing. So get this. They're getting these huge tax abatements, and they got 1,900 units, and none of it has to be affordable housing because of a loophole in the law.
So let me get this straight. Let me see if I understand you properly. So if you're really wealthy and you have lots of tax write-offs and you live in New York City, you don't have to pay any additional taxes. And if you are middle class and have a halfway decent salary, you're paying additional taxes in order to subsidize the building of these houses, but the billionaires who are developing the property aren't taking this property and giving any of it to the people who are most in need of it.
Yes, I think that's right. And then under 421A, they also want to make sure that the construction workers do not get the prevailing wage, and which is a very serious issue. When I became aware of this law and I saw what this REBNY was trying to do and these billionaire art collectors were trying to do to the workers and the construction workers in the city, I was outraged. I didn't know this issue. It only became aware of it when I began to research REBNY because some union leaders asked me, do you think there's anything you can do with this horrible institution that is creating havoc in the lives of construction workers throughout the city? So I took a look at it, and now I'm very excited. Now I've got to find some union leaders out there that decide that they really want to get together and take this institution on.
Well, with any luck at all, some of those union leaders will be listening to this program at some point, and they'll hear this. If not when the actual broadcast takes place, then at least they'll hear it on podcast, and we can get that information out to them.
Ray, what about legislatures? Are there any sympathetic legislatures out there?
They're few and far between, and there are some. I won't list any now, but I do know that there are some. But most of them have been bought and paid for. It doesn't mean that they don't act properly in other areas, but when it comes to the real estate industry, they've been bought and paid for. They're in the pocket of the real estate industry. And that's what millions and millions of dollars do, corrupting our political system, all the way from the city council, all the way to the mayor, all the way to the legislators, all the way to the governor's office. Okay? REBNY money. All right, REBNY money.
Ray, some of the leaders in the trades have spoken to me, and they're not. They feel the mayor has not been supportive. The mayor continues to talk about the expenses, and it's costly, and he has to hire for the affordable housing. Non-union, not that he's hiring, but he's got to work with the construction industry that's non-union. What's your thinking on that and the mayor's approach with the trades?
Well, it's unfortunate because I thought Mayor Bill de Blasio and his wife, Charlene, I thought this was going to be maybe the best mayor and wife team, first lady, maybe in this history of this city. I've been very concerned about the way that I see that they're expanding the real estate interest, and I think they're destroying the city. Again, we're not going to have a middle class in the city, so I have a real problem with the mayor on that. And I think that he has to be the mayor for everybody in the city, and not the big real estate interest.
All right, and we were just talking with Pat Dolan, and Pat told the story that people in the union, that's the route to the middle class. That's where you have a decent wage. That's where you have a decent pension. I mean, that would be the way to go. But somehow the mayor is still supportive of the non-union construction.
Neil, let me tell you what one of the spokespersons for REBNY said, was quoted in publication not too long ago. He said, well, if we have the prevailing wage, in 421A, then what the iron workers are going to make in $235,000 a year, and the construction workers are going to make, the carpenters are going to make $195,000 a year. My understanding is that if they do well, that the iron worker may make about $70,000 a year. He may make more if he does an awful lot of overtime and very difficult and dangerous and dirty work oftentimes. Same way with the carpenters. And I have no problem, by the way, with any of these workers making a much higher salary. Why? Because I know they're going to go out and spend the money in the local community.
And we're talking about the most dangerous work. We're talking about somebody comes to work at 6 o'clock in the morning, goes up on a building in the freezing cold or the hot weather. I mean, these are these incredible, tough jobs.
And you know what we're finding, Neil, as the labor movement is decreasing in the power here in the city, I see these immigrant workers out there. They're making maybe $12 an hour with no benefits. Maybe they're making a little bit more.
And they're taken advantage of.
They're taken advantage of. And believe me, and let me tell you something. Every worker is a worker. I don't care whether they're here legally or illegally. They're a worker, okay? And they work very hard, and they deserve the protection of a union. And that's what the labor movement is about. And that's critical, okay, to the life of this city and to the people in it.
Well, right. You mentioned Bill de Blasio, or Neil mentioned Bill de Blasio and what his reaction was. And I'm sorry, I personally lump him in with the Clinton Eastas and the Cuomos of this world and the elite Democrats who really want to just wag their finger and tell us, how we're wrong and what we're not doing right. And they'd much rather, look, it's a lot easier to go out on a limb and tell somebody that they need to make $15 an hour for flipping hamburgers than it is to actually fight for the cause, okay, of a construction worker who deserves every damn cent of his $100,000 a year.
Well said, Bill. Very well said.